So thanks. My name's Frank DeFalco, and I work at Janssen in the Observational Health Data Analytics Group. Today, I'm going to be giving you a brief tutorial on Achilles. So before we answer any question about a population of interest, it's important that we first understand the content of the database that we intend to use, and we do this through database characterization. And that describes the entirety of a database. So database characterization helps us answer questions like what's the total number of people in a database, what's the distribution of age for those people, how long are the people observed, and what the proportion of people having different treatments, conditions, or procedures are. And Achilles is our tool for database characterization. It takes a database that's been converted into the OMOP CDM format and generates a database level characterization that answers each of those questions. So it's a great tool to take advantage of once you've completed your initial conversion to the CDM. So I'm going to jump into a brief walkthrough and we'll see how we could answer some of those questions using Achilles. So this is the Achilles website. As you'll notice at the top, we have the data source and report selectors, and this is how you'll interact with the website pretty much to get to any piece of information you're interested in. So here in our environment, I could choose from a long list of data sources, as well as a list of different reports. So I'm going to go back to those four questions I started with. First, trying to answer what's the total number of people in a database that's available in a number of locations in Achilles. Right now, I'm on this dashboard report, and you can see here in the top left, we have a CDM summary, which tells us that this particular database has 156 million lives represented. You get other things like a gender stratification, as well as a number of other charts. But that's our first question. We now know the total number of people in the database. The second question was, what's the distribution of age for those people? So you can see that also appears here on our dashboard. We could see the age at first observation for each person in our database. We could look at other reports that also have this information. So here I've switched using the top right here to the person report. And this person report has similar information, although here we're looking at it as the people in our database stratified by year of birth, another way of us looking at the distribution of age in the database. So let's say now I want to know how long on average are people observed in this database? Perhaps I have a study. I want to ensure that I have at least 2 years worth of data for the people in my study. What would this database give me in terms of observation time? For that, again, to the top right, I choose a report and I could choose the observation period report. So here we see the age at first observation, um, as well as a number of charts which show me the number of years people are contributing in terms of their observation length. Personally, I like to use this cumulative observation plot. It shows me that at time 0, 100% of people in the database are in the database. That makes some sense. But then I could look, say, around the 2-year mark and say, okay, at 2 years, 37% of the population contributes at least 2 years of cumulative observation. And I could take a look at how that varies across the database so that I could make some decisions about whether this will have enough information in general for the broad population. So that was our third question. And our last question was trying to answer, well, what's the proportion of people that have either a treatment or a condition or a procedure? So for that purpose, we have individual reports. So I'll start by taking a look at the drug report. So let's say I want to know how many people have a exposure to celecoxib. I could search here and I get a list and I could see the percentage of people that have at least one exposure to celecoxib. Something interesting I want to make sure I highlight here is, as opposed to concept sets and the phenotyping that we've seen demonstrated within the community, what we're looking at here is code level, so specific concept identifiers and how they appear in this database. You can see an interesting example of how that manifests if we go down here and we take a look at the drug exposure prevalence by month. So we could see over time, this particular drug seems to no longer be occurring in our data, But again, this is concept identifiers that we're characterizing here on the broad database. So if I switch to the second one in the list, you'll see somewhat of the inverse. Well, it looks like these codes have changed how they occur in our database over time. Again, this is a useful way to take advantage of database characterization. You have to remember, though, that you're looking at individual codes, source codes in many cases, that are occurring in a database. They're mapped to the standard vocabularies, but it is still just a per code analysis. Okay, so that's taking a look at drugs. Let's say I want to look at conditions. So I could pull up a condition report and we'll look at influenza, somewhat topical. And again, you could see the number of people in the database that have at least one record that has a diagnosis code of influenza, and the percentage of people in the database that have the same, along with the number of records per person. Here, if we scroll down, again, once we select on any of the items in this table, you'll see the breakout by age and sex for the condition. And here we could see that this happens to appear to be somewhat seasonal in terms of its occurrence within the database. Okay, now what about procedures? Well, for procedures, we have a procedure report. And here I've decided to do a search by a CPT code. So if I search for 77067, I'm looking at mammographies. I can see that there are 13 million people that have at least one record for mammography within the data. If I click on that, I am then again given the same kind of sex and age distribution views, as well as the prevalence by month, or the proportion of people over time that have it. And we see some potentially concerning drop in early of 2020 for a variety of reasons. I imagine COVID being one. So this gives us a very high level view of the data within our CDMs. As you can see in the list, I've just touched on a few of the reports that are available. There are many more, and a lot of this has all been documented within the various Book of OHDSI, as well as some of the documentation for the tools. So I do want to highlight that there are in fact a few different pieces of Achilles. The first is the R package. So the R package is available on GitHub in the OHDSI community under the Achilles URL. This is an R package. The R package performs those analyses that generates all of the results that are necessary in order to feed into that Achilles website. And so that is in fact the second part of Achilles. So you have the R package, Achilles, and then you have a website called Achilles Web. Getting started with Achilles, the current recommendation is that you either clone the master branch and build that locally if you're working with an R and comfortable building a package. You could also use the instructions that are provided down here on the GitHub website to install using a couple different packages to get the latest. It is recommended that you do pull these latest builds, as the last release, which was done in 2018, is a bit dated. In fact, over the course of the last year, as we could see here, we've closed over 100 individual bugs or issues associated with the Achilles package, most of that occurring in late 2020 and early 2021. So please do use that latest section or that latest code base by cloning or installing directly off the master branch for Achilles. Achilles Web is
Excuse me, Frank, 1 minute, okay?
Yep, thanks. Achilles Web is that second piece. So you would take this code. It is a very simple HTML JavaScript website. It does not require that you install the web API. It does not require that you install any service layers. You export your files from the Achilles package into JSON. You host them in the website, and then you have the web experience that I just walked through.